Paul, yeah. Just thinking about that phone call to the Library of Congress. Yes. I thought they had quite a few books there and maybe some other documents. They got started sometime around when the nation got started. But I've had some problems with libraries not understanding my rights. Now, there was a certain officer said that I was clogging up the email system of those that I was attempting to contact that happen to be federal employees. Yes. See, my understanding was when you contact the FBI and they don't respond, and there's forgeries and there's fraud and quite a few other crimes, really. Oh, and then local law enforcement says, well, we're going to obstruct him from contacting any federal authorities about the crime of issuing court orders where there is no due process. Oh. When I called the FBI, because I called quite a few of their field offices, it was one of those situations where they didn't take me seriously for some reason. But I thought it was a real crime to not have the petitioner there because she would have witnessed that any of the information that the court had was not actually admitted by her as the evidence for the reasoning for issuing court orders. And of course, when you don't give me any due process, why don't you give me every employee of every library of the United States for the last 60 years? All public libraries, all law libraries. It looks to me that a lot of those judges and justices that say they graduated from an ABA recognized school, they didn't actually visit any of the law libraries. It's almost like they went to law school, and I emailed all those law schools about this concept of federal offenses and obstructing citizens from contacting federal authorities, and then police departments tell librarians, well, the guy's sending 3,000 emails a day from the public library and it's clogging up the systems of all those federal authorities. The Department of Justice. Got quite a few attorneys there. Have they ever been to a state law library? As I understand it, most Supreme Courts, they have their own law library. It's kind of something that they use once in a while when they have a question of the law. And then there are the law libraries of the ABA recognized law schools of the United States that don't know anything about mail fraud. They don't know about due process. I know. Emailing all those law firms and law schools about my rights being violated and documenting felonies as if I was trying to get the attention of the federal authorities instead of the local police department. Now, quite often when you're well, I've had a real difficult time with law enforcement obstructing my right to communicate with federal authorities. I once asked a police officer, Deputy Chief Fish himself, I said, could I use your cell phone? I'd like to call the FBI. And he laughed his ass off, like, who do you think you are asking me to contact the FBI? If you have a problem with us issuing a court order where there's forgeries, fraud, you can motion the court. Oops. Looks like law enforcement intentionally obstructed my right to contact federal authorities about violating the civil rights of American citizens. Now, there could be a crime here someplace. When staying at the homeless shelter last night, I was reading something about obstruction of justice. I think it's a real crime anytime you ask a police officer, yes, I'd like to call the FBI so that I can inform them my civil rights are violated, my sons have been abducted, and after 2 million emails, nobody really believes that that's what's happened. When the sheriff sends an email to those in law enforcement, well, Paul's a homeless, mentally ill man, and he doesn't really understand the factual, rational understanding of why we issue court orders without the petitioner actually actually giving any of the information, and then there's a fraudulent attempt to service, and then serving me in the Sequim Public Library, and then serving someone else other than myself. Now, maybe the sheriff might realize that there are certain, well, laws, yes, that make it a crime to obstruct any citizen from contacting federal authorities, yes, when they have knowledge of a crime. Oh, now it was so much easier saying I was crazy, pooch, homeless. Now today, why don't you get me the law libraries? I'd like to know every law school student. Are you in law school? You're planning on getting one of these attorney degrees, or you want to be a lawyer? Do they require you to do any research before you get that degree? I mean, you sit for the bar and you just go there. Well, you got a pre-law degree for 4 years and a JD or an LLM or whatever you call yourself. But you never visited the law library the whole time you went to law school. Why don't you get me the signatures of every public library? You know, there's a Carnegie Library just down the street from here, one of these that they built in 1910 or 1920. Seemed like a lot of rich philanthropic individuals. Oh, is that right? Ben Franklin himself started a library. Do you know where it's located at? You know, when I think about all the torture and terrorism and suffering and pain, having personally asked the police department, a graduate of the FBI Academy, pooh, isn't that right? Oh, give me all 50,000 of the graduates of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Academy of Law Enforcement. It seems that they don't really teach them about civil rights or forgeries, fraud, kidnapping, grand larceny. They don't teach them about the whole constructed fraud of not requiring a petitioner to be there and the use of fraudulent addresses so that you send court notices to the wrong address for the last freaking years. Let me just talk to you.